Welcome to Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, a podcast where we tackle the literal and figurative clutter standing between you and your healthiest and happiest life. I'm Melanie, your host, coach, and guide on this journey to help you design a life that you love. Whether it's clearing out your kitchen cabinets, untangling your digital files, or letting go of the mental blocks that hold you back, we're here to make space for what truly matters. Let's lighten up together. Starting now. Welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, where we talk about all things clutter. And today is one of those episodes where we are talking about holiday clutter. And we're also talking about deep mental clutter. And I have a special guest with me today. I have Adrienne Petrino. So Adrienne is a transformation-focused coach, grief movement guide, and author of Let It All In. Adrienne's Let It All In explores the raw, real ways grief showed up during the first half of 2024. Adrienne helps people navigate the tender space between loss and renewal through somatic practices, emotional awareness, and deep presence. As we enter the holiday season, she's here to help us explore how grief shows up and how we can honor it with compassion, movement, and meaning. Adrienne, thank you for being here today.
Melanie, thanks for inviting me. I'm so grateful of how you and I connected and what has been possible since our connection.
100%. And interestingly enough, I've had a somatic coach on before, someone we both know really well. Everyone can go back and check out Kristen's episode because you're both trauma-informed somatic coaches. So since we just said that, tell us what a somatic coach is and what they do.
Sure. A somatic coach really allows the client or group to recognize what's in their body, allows them space to be in that space of allowance of what comes up. Somatic just means present in the body. So what is most alive in the body?
I sat in on an incredible somatic practice with Kristen. You both did one together, and wow, the emotions that come out. That was an incredible experience for me, and I encourage listeners out there, if you haven't tried this is incredibly powerful. But you lean into coaching in the space of grief. Can you tell us a little bit about what was the impetus to doing that, and then tell us what that looks like?
Sure. Well, grief is defined as any unwanted change. And I'm sure throughout this conversation today, we'll talk about the different types of grief and how it comes up, how it shows up. For my personal story, I evolved to become a trauma-informed grief coach in the leadership space and also evolved to grief movement guide. And it's wild how I got here. I said yes to coaching in 2017 and what that looked like. I was also becoming a certified grief peer-to-peer facilitator for an organization when I lived in New Jersey called Imagine, and shout out to Imagine, just Center of Coping with Loss. And I share that because I had my own loss really early on. My dad unexpectedly died when I was 20 years old. I was a sophomore in college. Great support system then and now. But the language to talk about grief and be with my grief wasn't there. My brain and all our brains aren't able to process sudden death. Neurotypical, neurodivergent, all brains do not know how to process sudden death. So how I navigated that wasn't sustainable. And fast forward over 20 years, my mom then died of cancer. And when my mom died, I had said to myself and my sister and the people around me, like, I don't know how to grieve sustainably. This grief is never going away. It just comes back and hits you. And so I needed to figure out a way for myself that looked sustainably. I can navigate it. So I actually took myself on the big island of Hawaii and farm for a few weeks in this program.
Wait a minute, because this conversation never came up between the two of us. I found out from someone else who had been talking to you. Adrienne lives on the big island, and she has lived there for over 30 years and has lived in Hawaii for 55. So, okay. All right. Right. So go ahead. You took off for the big island of Hawaii.
I took off for the big island of Hawaii to give myself space and ask myself questions like, how the hell are you going to grieve? What does that look like? How do you want to be with it? There were actually coaching questions before I even know what coaching was. and I gave myself space to be there. The farm that I said yes to was up to yoga, which gives like space to present day and movement and somatic practices, all that I just was open to say yes to because I needed something other than language to help me navigate grief and be with it.
Okay, so first of all, where on the Big Island?
Paloma, right outside of Kilo. And they had kirtans. They have gatherings of people through food, through singing, through dance, through spiritual guidance. And you didn't have to follow that, but you just be with it, show up however you wanted to show up. And that, Melanie, was probably one of the first times of full allowance of me to show up whatever mood, whatever I was feeling, just to be in that space. And that is how I evolved as a coach, to provide spaces of safety and trust, and whatever trust and safety looks for each individual or group, and how to be with their uncomfortable, how to be with their grief.
That whole get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I wrote down a few things. First of all, I just want to say if you're going to do anything that's spiritual, Hawaii in and of itself is a very spiritual place. And I've had the opportunity of doing things like yoga and qigong and meditation practice and been able to do it in a semi outdoor space as opposed to in a studio in New York City. So, especially when you can hear the chickens in the background and stuff like that, it's a completely different experience. But it really does make you feel both one with nature while you're becoming one with your body. So, I wanted to throw that out there.
The reason why I went to work on a farm was to cathartically chop stuff and grow stuff. There was something that I really needed in this moment that was a machete that I learned how to cut like a banana tree. So yes, give me this machete because I didn't know what else to do with my grief. I was done throwing it out at people, reacting to it. I was really angry. I just didn't know how to foster that anger in a really healthy way. I've just demonstrated it in myself and to others in a non-healthy way. So I knew I'm good at movement. I knew that this is where I wanted to be. And using those tools to allow myself to let the uncomfortable surface because it was real deep down in my body.
Sure, sure. So that we can get deeper into how that works, I want us to take a moment to recognize that grief is so many different things. Like when we talk about grief, immediately people think of the loss of a loved one, but there are so many other forms of grief. Maybe you can talk about what some of those might be.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. Grief is defined as any unwanted change. So, ones I would talk about are, like you mentioned, a loss of a human or a pet. Those are tangible. But what about anticipatory grief, where if you are a caretaker for people that have illnesses or dementia, you can't see that. We're speaking in November, the SAP benefits have gone off. I bring that up because that was unexpected. That's a loss. Yeah, I partner with individuals and groups of like layoffs, mergers and acquisitions. Those are all uncertainty and unwanted changes. Those are different types of loss. Loss is so unique and individual. My sister grieved totally different. It's totally unique to us. There's over 16 types of grief, but those ones I name because they're happening in real time right now for people with massive layoffs that are happening. The holidays can bring up a lot of unresolved grief, complicated grief, real time grieving. How do you hold space for that? We'll talk about joy and the things that maybe we look forward to or used to look forward to before our loss.
That's gonna be incredible. I wanna touch on something that you made me think of, and when I think of, like, different forms of loss, many people know that I was in college when my father's drug addiction became extreme to the point of going to rehab. I don't know how many times before it stuck. But in that period of time, he and my mom went bankrupt. They lost my father's business. My father lost his car. We lost my childhood home. And that was a big loss for my mother because she was in it. For me, I was a little bit divorced from the situation because I was in school in California and my family was in New York. I'm an only child. And at one point, I no longer had a home to go home to. So there was a period of time in my young adulthood where I felt like I had no home. I had friends who took me in. I became a live in nanny. But for a very long period of time, I did feel huge loss. There were so many feelings that go into your home, the place that you grew up. My friends lived in the building. That's where I went for so many special things in life. And so that kind of grief is often the kind of grief that leads into physical clutter, the hanging on to things because things had disappeared, for fear someone is going to sell my things for drugs, someone is going to take my things away from me. And I think about my mom who, went into Section 8 housing, got a job through the Women to Work program and was getting food from food stamps. There was fear where your next meal is coming from. And this was 30 plus years ago. Look at how many people are in the middle of that right now. So I share the story because I want people to also think to the things that have happened in their life and maybe not to them, but happened to others and can kind of understand a little bit or gather some understanding of what that feels like and how that's hard to manage. Tell us about working with people. What does that look like, you working with someone?
Thank you for sharing your story. Something comes to mind. A quote that I really love is there are really only two stages of grief: who we were before and who we were after. And you talk about those experiences, whole like myriad of them, where you had a home and then you didn't. So that's a lot of layers of loss. That just resonates with me so much. How everything that comes up in your emotions, those layered of emotions and experiences. Trauma is not just the event of you losing that house, it's every experience after that and how you navigate that and the grief within those experiences. And all the grief is an emotion and it can unlock and trap a lot of those emotions. And I partner with people to navigate. We slow down, they bring up all their emotions from all those experiences because the experience you lost a house, those emotions can be different what Thanksgiving looks like or what a holiday looks like for you. There's grief in that absence, never having that again. And those emotions can be much different than the tangible loss of your house. So we create a partner together, whether it be individual or groups, to name that and identify those. What is happening? Just identify it, not to move it, not to push it out, not to ignore it, not to be like, I need to be strong, or all the things that maybe sayings or actions you've seen your environment that you've grown up in. Those are survivor mechanisms. Like that's what we've been taught. That's what comes naturally. A bunch of things that I did to survive, and I'm still navigating that and working with a trauma-informed financial therapist with my business because that still shows up in some areas. Allowing those things to come up, but in the way for you and how you want to then process it.
Right. I have so many things to say. One of them is, there was also a loss of, I'm going to call it loss of education because I was asked to leave school. My parents hadn't paid for a couple of years. I didn't know that was happening. I was forced to sign a promissory note in the amount of about $18,000, 1991 times. But, for people who are listening, imagine being in college and all of a sudden you sign off on $45,000 because that's essentially what it's equal to now. And so there was a loss of direction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what it also makes me realize is how many different forms of loss there are and how we approach healing perhaps in different ways depending on the kind of trauma or loss it is. Can you speak to that? Like, what does it look like? Is it actually different when you're working with someone who maybe lost a job, lost a home, or something along those lines versus having lost a human or a pet?
I think it's different for each individual. The biggest thing is allowing them to grieve the way that they want to. So it's empowering people to learn how to navigate it versus taking over you because you didn't have the tools. You're not taught this. It's validating your experience, validating your loss. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misconceptions with this grief, which I want to highlight because those sometimes are our narrator on what becomes our belief system. Like we have to get over it. Grief is linear. There's a timeline. Oh, it's been 5 years. I should be over this by now. No matter what type that grief is, grief isn't linear. There's no timeline on grief. And having people learn what that is for themselves based on giving them tools such as actual language of emotions, using things like the feelings wheel or a mood meter that Mark Brackett does, who's a head of the Yale Center for Emotions. Language, using your ability to create language that you didn't know before. People say, "Oh, you're so strong." I'm not strong. Like, I didn't choose this to happen. You didn't choose your parents to become bankrupts, but people would say, "Oh, you're so strong." No, I didn't choose to be strong. But I had to learn that, like, "Oh, I have to be strong, I have to be strong." No, that strength to me looks much differently now that I allowed myself to say, like, "What does my grief look like?" And also be able to talk about it to others. I think boundaries come very intertwined because it's your story to tell, and how you wanna learn to tell it, that's a part of my partnership too in that space is, like, learning what this was, how it's showing up for you, now that you know this, now you're collecting this data about yourself. That's what emotions are. It's data. But you are now giving yourself the opportunity and space and time to learn about yourself in a new way. And then also be alerted when these things come up, and they're going to come up as waves, cyclones, hit you in the back of the head, using curiosity versus, um, I don't want to deal with it.
I love this because I think, first of all, when you talk about having the language, a lot of us get stuck in mad, sad, glad. I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm glad. And it doesn't really define a feeling very well, that it helps to have a wealth of words to be able to use. And
You mentioned mad, glad, and sad. Those are three of the seven core emotions that researchers, scientists have shared. They're called core emotions, but in the feelings wheel, you'll see it small and then bigger. There's two other ones. There's over 250 emotions that a human can experience, emotions and feelings. It has emotions that are, some people say primary and secondary, but other emotions than just the core ones. And when I first saw that, I was like, holy, and then a lot of superlatives like anger. It's much more hurt. I'm disappointed. I have angst. I have fury. I have rage. Also, what the feelings will show is they're complementary to joy, curiosity. Emotions don't have to be one or the other. A way to look at them, we've been in environments like negative and positive. That's one way. Other ways that I invite people is to think about it as uncomfortable and comfortable, unpleasant and pleasant. Because anger is not a negative emotion. It is a very valid, real emotion. We've just seen it displayed in negative ways. So it's taking that anger, that language of all those emotions. You can be angry, sad, and especially the holidays, joyous or cheer filled, but also exhausted, overwhelmed, furious, sad together. You can feel over 20 emotions at once, and connecting of how you feel when they come up, also where in the body they're living at that moment, and giving people the pause just to recognize that. And that recognition is an action that I want to share with every high achieving brains that like don't think that's an action. It is. That reflection, that acknowledgement is an action. You are learning something about you, your body, that is telling you loud and clear. Often through grief, we don't at first want to see it or feel it or believe it. It's such a paradox. When we actually lean into it, it takes that darkness and it gives us new light.
you make me think about, I had learned quite some time ago in my early years of coaching, and I've been coaching for almost 25 years now, is the idea of things being helpful or unhelpful when it comes to thoughts, helpful thoughts, unhelpful thoughts, or behaviors, helpful, unhelpful, as opposed to positive and negative, because positive and negative is like so black and white. It's so binary, but they're easy words to use because we hear them over and over and over again. That's one of the things that I like about the feelings wheel. It's not a bad idea to study it, better understand the depth of words that we can be using that may describe it better than mad, sad, glad.
That's not black and white. Grief, loss is gray. It's really gray. So to have tools people have developed to help you with that language, movement is a language when words aren't working. There are other ways to navigate the uncomfortable. that loss, that heaviness, that clutter, that emotional, cognitive, like brain fog, not remembering things, memory loss is real. It's scientific fact that these things are all connected to grief. They're connected. And it's just giving allowance for ourselves to be in a space that at the moment when you start working with or talking to anybody about it is really uncomfortable. Talking to yourself about it. I didn't want to admit that I was hurting. I was really hurting. But be able to say that to you now after 20 years, and there's still times I am hurting, but I have the ability now and capacity to say those things. And that has been such a transformation for myself because I have that language. And when I'm feeling this way, I can tell my partner, this has nothing to do with you, but these things are coming up and they're coming up loud. And I need to take a beat. And that beat might look differently each time this happens. But now I have the language to say, these emotions are really vibrating. I don't know what's about. I need some space. I'm going to take a walk. Or I can't be present for you right now because these emotions are really loud. So just being able to give that language to myself and then to my loved ones, the people who if I didn't, I would be really ugly and miserable too. And I have.
One of the things that I'm hearing is that grief manifests itself in many different ways. And like I suffer from IBS. One is it at its worst when I'm stressed and depressed, like the extreme emotions. And I'm oversimplifying stressed and depressed.
Yeah.
But for those of us who experience neck pain, lower back pain, hip pain, so much of that is coming from our feelings, like you're talking about right now, and not just like I don't want to minimize the fact that there are people who suffer from migraines because chocolate or light or, other things, but how much more aggravated are those things? How much more often do they happen when we're experiencing extreme emotions that we don't know how to manage in that moment? You also made me think of something. It never ceases to amaze me how timely things can be. I recently had all of our videos transferred digitally. And one of the videos was one that I thought I had seen, and I watched it. I realized I had never seen it before, and I called my cousin to talk to her about it. And it turned out she hadn't seen it before either. And it was the video that my father had made of my grandmother right before she died. So I thought for some reason it was my grandmother saying goodbye to Melanie and goodbye in Italian, goodbye to Joey, and goodbye to our fathers. And instead, apparently, what had happened was she had a nightmare. And in the nightmare, she was gone, but she was like looking over the family, and we were grieving and we were crying and we were hysterical. And she didn't want that to happen. So she wanted the video to serve as a way for her to say, first of all, I'm at peace. I'm in a lot of pain. And I could go now and I will be in a better place. I won't be experiencing this pain anymore. So know that I'm at peace with going. And I thought about like how beautiful she didn't want us to grieve. But just because Grandma Sadie said don't grieve doesn't mean you don't grieve. And so here it is. She died in 1998. Okay. So here it is 27 years later, and I am bawling. Part of it was I haven't heard her voice in a really long time. I have an idea in my head what she sounds like, but I watched the video and there's her voice and her face moving, like not a photograph, like, animation. Not as animated as she had been because she was in a lot of pain and unhappy, and she made it as long as she needed to. My cousin Natalia got married 3 weeks before she died. She was like, I'm going to be at that wedding. And she was at that wedding and in pain and upset. So talk a little bit about someone hoping that when they're gone, people wouldn't mourn them and experience grief.
Well, I think because it's like their hope. They don't want to see people in pain. They don't want to have the people that they love to be in pain. But we can't control that. And, of course she's going to do it. She loved all you, cared for all of you. But even you seeing that 27 years later, there's still going to be things that activate you or trigger you that actual moment, that experience, and you can't control, but you can now respond to that versus reacting to that, meaning that like, oh, I'm going to feel my feelings and or if you're in a place that like, say you saw that right before you had to go coach and be like, Okay, what am I feeling? All right, can't work with this right now, but you give me after this call, I'm going to come back to you and we are going to figure this out together. People don't want to see other people in pain. Like, if you know a person that is grieving right now, right? Often our inner thoughts will say, oh, I don't want to bring it up. They're lost to them because I'm going to make them feel upset. Guess what? They are already thinking about that loss. And for you mentioning that actually gives them connection and support. But our brains to be like, oh, I don't want to like intrude on them. So I don't bring this up. But then what happens? No one is ever talking about that loss, even if that loss is complicated. The person that is grieving will tell you if they don't want to talk about it. But if that person seems happy and you're like, oh, I can't ruin their day actually bringing up their loss, or like if they went through a horrible divorce and they don't seem happy, you can still check in with them. Because guess what? They're thinking about it. But we
Right.
don't want to see people in pain, like your loved one that you just mentioned. She didn't want to see you guys in pain, but it's your pain, where you are. So giving people um, that space, that acknowledgement, also connecting it with clutter when people are going through grief, that overwhelm, that brain fog, you can't make decisions. It's just really hard. So you saying, yeah, I'm here to help you. That's great because you do want to help them, but be really clear. Like, I'm going to cook for you. Is it okay if I bring food over to you this week? What day? Like, being very focused and present, exact, helps the griever make decisions a little easier because that loss has them kind of paralyzed, whatever that loss is. And to be able to even say you think of something easily, I'm hungry, can be really hard for somebody. Anytime acute grief, that means happens right now, like in the first like 3 months of loss to unresolved to complicated, if they're being a caretaker and also grieving themselves too. And then you ask them, you think a basic question of like, are you hungry? They may not be able to answer that.
This is fascinating. I had my Mother's Day gift was Leah DeFeo, and this is a woman who experienced the loss of a newborn more than once and finally was able, you know, to bring a child into the world that now lives with her and loves her and experiences her. And one of the things that we talked about on her episode is what should people say? Because for sure, people are talking more about miscarriage than they did before. They're talking more about stillborn before, but it's still something that I think more of us experience the loss of a parent, right? That's just, statistically speaking, we're all going to lose our parents at some point. I don't think I'm surprising anybody out there. That's a different kind of loss. But I think sometimes we really don't know what to say. You were talking about being specific, not let me know when you need food. Rather, I'm going to bring you food this week. Which day is best for you? It's a lot easier for that person to answer affirmatively as opposed to, oh, I'll let you know, and then doesn't make the call because in grief, you're not necessarily capable of like mustering up the strength to pick up the phone and call someone.
Totally. Totally. I can share examples of things to say and shit not to say. Um, like even just asking a person, like, what do check-ins look like for me? Like, can I text you? I'm not expecting you to ever return my text, but is it okay if I text you every day? That's because our own thought system might think like, oh, we're intruding, or like they don't want to talk to me, or they don't want like it's in this goes on a spiral. So we're just asking, like, what do check-ins look like? Um,
Because it's not about you, it's about the person in grief.
yeah. So that person also who like has significant loss of a child, right? Like things I heard people say are like, "Oh, try again." When are you gonna try again? Like they divert from the loss because it's so painful. People don't talk about pain and uncomfortableness. So, just some people say, okay, like sorry for your loss. Some people think it's not okay to say sorry for your loss. But when someone is sharing their loss, do not cut them off and say sorry for your loss. Let them, they are sharing with you what is happening to them. Why I say that is because then it disrupts their share. They just had the courage and bravery to share something really painful that they experience, whatever that loss is, listening to listen. saying that, "Oh, that sucks." Like, "I am sorry for your loss. I'm here for you. I don't know what to say." That's actually really beautiful to say, "I don't know what you're going through. I can't imagine what you're going through, but I'm here for you. What does that look like today?" When someone is sharing their loss, I don't recommend you comparing it to like a loss that you had. Oh, I know exactly what you're going through. My sister, I say that again, has been through this. It happens so often because we don't know what to say. There's a part of me that there is language is an organization. I can't remember them. I'll send it to you afterwards. Want to pull it in as a
Mhm.
resource of
Sure.
teens actually developed this website or app about language to say to other teens when there's been a loss. And it's brilliant because of like what to say and what not to say. When I was a peer-to-peer facilitator for different age groups and different types of loss, one of my favorite things was an exercise we would do. It's like things that you enjoyed people saying or you didn't like people saying. There'd be statements like sorry for your loss. They're in a better place. You're so strong. They're at peace. You don't know what they've been through, but we say because that's the language that we've heard or things that's going to stop the uncomfortableness where
Right.
just allowing it, just saying, "Oh, I can't what you're going through. What does support look like?" Just to listen.
Like, you don't have to so many of us are so uncomfortable with silence, but you know what? You don't even have to talk to the person. Like your presence may just be enough. The more you talk, the more they think they need to talk. If they're listen, I rarely shut up. Most people know that about me. If I'm quiet, I think that's when people are like, "Oh my God, something's wrong." Like Melanie's been quiet for 30 straight minutes. Something must be wrong. What I'm hearing from you is, yes, that's true. And it can be, I'm navigating, something painful from a long time ago or in the moment. Okay. So I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about the grief that comes up. This episode is actually airing after Thanksgiving, but
Okay.
Thanksgiving brings up a lot of the feelings associated with loss that Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, New Year's, birthdays, or, any other special, Passover, Easter, Rosh Hashanah, like all the things. So someone's not there that you have been celebrating with, for your whole life or many, many years. Talk a little bit about what that looks like during a time when I'm using air quotes for those listening. You're supposed to be happy during the holidays, but then there's these really deep, hard feelings associated with the loss of someone who's not there.
Giving yourself space to everything that is coming up for you with that person not being there. Because that also might look differently this year than last year because your life might be different. So acknowledging that it's not, each year is not going to be the same. It look differently. I call grief a shapeshifter. It is crazy, emo, the way that it might look like one time differently. Partnering with clients to build their toolbox, like for different tools for different occasions. One might work one day, might not work not the other day. When you go into Thanksgiving or any holiday that's supposed to be celebratory, you can be celebratory and also in pain. It doesn't have to be one or the other. But asking yourself, what does that look like for you in this moment? And letting other people in your life know that you're not okay. Like, I don't know if I want to celebrate Thanksgiving. And there might be people, but you need to, you have to, it'll be better for you. You know, it's best for you and being able to articulate that. But you also give yourself like, damn, I can celebrate this. And then it might look like differently the next day for you. So I share that is like, it's very individual and so unique to each person, even when there's like, say, a parent died and there's 6 kids, each of those kids are going to grieve differently. Some might go with brain of linear, I want to fix, I want to solve, I have to have everybody over. Another person might want to show up. There is no wrong or right way, and our brains try to make it that right way. So for someone who's going through this grief themselves, check in with yourself. What do you need at this moment? What does that look like for you, moment to moment? For the people that have or know someone that is going to grieve or that is grieving, that it might look differently this year than last year because they might be through a whole different sort of circumstances. So checking
Mm.
in with them. I hope that answers your question.
I think it's fantastic. I think, it's really helpful to know that we all grieve in different ways, different times of the day, times of the year, etc. And so I think one of the good takeaways for people is that it's okay to be sad during the holidays. And if someone tells you you should be happy, you get to say shut the fuck up first of all,
Yeah.
or whatever you need to say, because I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes from good intentions. I don't want you hurting.
But guess what? I am hurting. To be in the mess with someone, to hold their hand, to let them be in pain, to be by their side, not be behind them or ahead of them, just be next to them, to be with them in that mess. That takes a lot out of a person to be okay that their friend or loved one, whoever, is not okay. We are naturally wanting to fix or help, but that help can look differently to each person, and they might not want that fix. They just might want you
Right.
to be next to them.
Yeah.
For myself, practices and experiences and rituals I put in place and with my loved ones have been a way for me to celebrate my parents. So I am Italian. One of my favorite eating holidays is the Seven Fishes. It's a celebration of Christmas Eve. It looked differently before my dad died, than after my dad died, and after my mom died. So my sister and I go to a different restaurant each year and eat at least seven fishes. And for us, that helps us. We always have our one-on-one, but there's been times where we had it over our friends and everybody brought a different fish dish or seafood. And there were so many different nationalities and ethnicities there. It was amazing. And my parents would have loved that. So the darkness came out this beautiful connection and light. And I help people to reconnect themselves to themselves, because grief can take you out and will take you out. How also being in grief, allowing us to reconnect to you and what that looks like. Form of rituals, form of things that you want to do and to celebrate or not celebrate, because not all loss of a person that was in your life is a love loss. It can be very complicated, unresolved. And there, when people die, we have this as society to memorialize them and like, oh, that person was great. And that the person I'd be grieving might not think of that way. And that is okay, because that's the way that your relationship was with that person. It can be very complicated and unresolved. And how do you navigate that when someone is saying, oh, they were the best? So, especially during the holidays, when people, like, for some reason, all the stuff that they did, which was not so great, doesn't get brought up. But for people that are grieving, it's still there, it's still with them. So that is the clutter that can come up during celebratory times when that person that died may have loved them, but it could be more complicated than that. And that is okay for all those feelings to come up. And that's where we use the feelings wheel to be like, was this? I'm disappointed, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm hurt. To identify those relationships that are complicated. And with that grief comes all those complications and the allowance to let you be okay to say that person was not okay. What they did to me, those things were not okay.
What I'm hearing is for a lot of us, we have very mixed feelings about certain relationships in our life, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or a spouse or a child. And that, well, you should have to mourn that person because you're supposed to. And it's going to look very different with someone who went through a lot of shit with a family member. I want to talk briefly about holiday clutter when it comes to decorations and gifts and wrapping paper and all the things. And when it comes to decorations, whether they're menorahs and dreidels or their Christmas ornaments or stockings. Most of us have had these for a long time. Maybe they belonged to someone before, and the need to hang on to everything. I want to be I want to be abundantly clear to everybody that we we have an emotional attachment to our things, and we have a special emotional attachment to things that belong to someone before. And people have heard me say it a million times that things have energy. And if that ornament has great energy and it's broken, but you still love it, put it on the tree and enjoy it. But if a beautiful, expensive ornament has bad energy, you've got to let it go. It doesn't matter who it belonged to, how much money was spent on it, how long it's been on the planet. that if something doesn't have good energy, that we need to be able to let it go. And I think this is a time of year where it's not just the china, it's not just the little thingamajig, tchotchke, bric-a-brac that someone had left. There are all these other emotional ties when it comes to the holidays and bringing people together. And grief often leads to clutter, mental, we've talked about, physical, what I'm mentioning right now. But in some cases, this can lead to high levels of hoarding. And I want to make it clear to people on a regular basis that I'm a coach, I'm not a therapist. High level hoarding needs to be managed by a therapist. A coach with a therapist can be incredibly helpful. But part of that is because high levels of hoarding often come from OCD, from post traumatic stress disorder, and many different forms of trauma. And I want people to understand, if you go to someone who is more cluttered than you are and it looks like they're hoarding and it's things that you think that they don't need, you've got to give them time to better understand for themselves when it's time to let things go. And if you see deep pain or things that look dangerous in some way, then yeah, it does have to be addressed. But it's important to respect the fact that we're hanging on to things that once belonged to someone because somehow their energy is in the thing.
Oh, I was gonna tell you a story of my experience. One, you said like the good energy, bad energy. Also, like your relationship with this object, because emotional ties to it.
Yes.
And first, like acknowledging that yes, this object that has maybe been in your house post the loss is there. Getting curious of like what is relationship like for you? Like when there's been things that I released very
Hmm.
quickly. Other things I held on to, like my mom's makeup, was in a bag underneath my bathroom sink. And it was there. Every once in a while, I would open it up and just smell it because it reminded me of my mom, and that's what I needed at the time. And then one day, I was cleaning out, reorganizing, saw it, and released it. It's from. I feel like there's such a tie in that, and when you are helping to grieve and they're like cleaning out a house or cleaning out those things, the gentleness with it, being with a thing, like there is a emotional tie that you might not see that connection, but there is a connection there. So how you mentioned that just giving that gentleness to yourself, first of all, and to each other, like there's gonna be time, like, and I'm not experiencing hoarding at all or coaching through hoarding. So my own experience, I still have a storage unit of things of my stuff in my former house that has also had my dad and my mom's. It's been a few years. I'm now this year, next year in January, like, Q1, have made it, of 2026. I'm ready now to go through that and move things on. But it was okay. I'm okay that there was a financial attachment to this storage unit that I'm okay with giving because I was not ready to release it yet. And being able to say that to myself and other people, like, yep, I have a storage unit. It is mine. I want it there. And when I'm not ready, I'm ready to release it and say, to thank it for everything it's given me or not given me, and then let it, and then say, thank you, and then goodbye to it is a very cathartic thing, but a thing that's a relationship because objects have stories, they have memories, emotions and feelings come with it, the uncomfortable and the comfortable ones. That memory might not be a positive memory, but it is a memory that you remember and that still is with you. And how you navigate that is very personal to each person.
For sure. I am a huge fan of talking to things. Like, talk to the things. Ask them questions, answer back, have a relationship with your things so that you can be more confident in your choices of both keeping and letting go of items. And you know what? There are going to be times there will regret. You know what? Just saw a picture of something and I'm like, I loved that. Why did I let that shirt go? Because I'm the one that's always like, let it go, let it go, let it go. And you know
Yeah,
what? It's
yeah.
a shirt. It would be so cheap to replace if I really needed the thing. The reality was
Yep.
I wore it twice. Maybe I only wore it twice because I let it go. But I don't think I was going to wear it more than twice more. No. And yeah. I'm glad we're having this conversation, and I'm glad that I have an opportunity to kind of follow up with it. I also am getting the idea that maybe Adrienne and I need to do another episode at some point next year.
If it's next year, I can let you know my update on my storage unit and how I was with my things.
And I happen to know people if you need help with any of that. I got people. Okay, so Adrienne, before we finish up, this is all going to be in the show notes, but where can people find you? What do you want them to have access to?
My website is my name, adriennepetrino.com. Also, Instagram's Adrienne Petrino and my LinkedIn. That's the best ways. I'm based out of Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and my intentions for 2026 is to do more in person and local things. That's how Melanie and I connected with. So it's not just Bay Ridge, but South Brooklyn, and creating circles of for people's grief, want to change to be witnessed in a non-judgment, non-biased environment. Those are to continue. Again, they'll be all on my website and my social.
Amazing. Amazing. That'll all be in the show notes. And before we finish up today, what's a last thought? What do you want to make sure that listeners walk away with today?
What you're going through can be a very lonely and isolating feeling, especially during the holidays. You are not alone. Your grief is validated. It's seen, it is heard. Find that foundation, that support system that you can share, whether it be in counseling, therapy, coaching. Feel seen and heard, have that listening ear. I'm not going to say, get over it. Your grief deserves to be seen and heard in a healthy way.
I love that. I love that so much. Adrienne, thank you for being here today.
Melanie, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free. I hope you found a spark of inspiration to help declutter not just your space, but your mind and life as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lightness in their life. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about progress. Small steps lead to big changes, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. For more tips, resources, and ways to connect, check out my website, follow me on social media, and don't forget to check out the Design Your Healthy Life Strategy program to take your transformation even further. Until next time, keep letting go of what no longer serves you and making room for what truly lights you up.